On February 1st, 2004, surveillance cameras behind a Sarasota, Florida car wash captured the moment 11-year-old Carlie Brucia was abducted by Joseph Smith. Smith confronted the sixth grader in an empty parking lot, grabbed her by the arm and kidnapped her. Carlie was then raped and strangled to death. Police found Carlie's body 4 nights later. After the moment, mechanic and father of 3 confessed to family members that he killed her. Joseph Smith was convicted and sentenced to death. Now that death sentence has been overturned by an appeals court. So could her killer escape death row? Joining us now to discuss the latest developments in this case is crimeonline.com's Nancy Grace. Nancy, Smith has been on death row now for 12 years. Why is his death sentence being vacated, and what do we know about this loophole?
Well, I've got to tell you, Carlie's parents are absolutely devastated. Her mother, of course, died very shortly, about a month after she learned about this reversal. The father is devastated. This is what went down. In Florida, for a death penalty sentence, the jury doesn't have to be unanimous. This jury was 10-2. For the death penalty. And there was a Supreme Court ruling in State versus Hurst that said it had to be unanimous. Now that ruling was after Brucia's murder, but it's being applied retroactively to other people on the Florida death row. So while his case in chief, guilt innocence, is not being touched, the sentencing portion only. As you know, Jesse, in a death penalty case, there is a guilt innocence phase and then a death penalty phase. It is a bifurcated or double trial. So the sentencing phase has to be retried.
This is a terribly sad story, Nancy. There's some gruesome details here. What do we know about the killer in this case?
Oh, Jesse, you know, you look at Carlie Brucia, she's 11 years old. That's a year older than my twins are right now. Still just a baby. In fact, that night, Jesse, she was having a little sleepover at her little friend girl's house up the street. She was only about a block and a half away from home. She was going home the next morning and she cut, instead of going all the way to the corner and turning, she cut across the back of a car wash in their neighborhood. And that is when the defendant, Joseph Smith, he was an unemployed auto mechanic with a long criminal history, including drug abuse. He had just had a probation violation and they let him out just in time for him to horribly, brutally attack Carlie Brucia and murder her. Her body found out in a wooded area behind a local church 4 days later.
And it's an important point you make right there, Nancy, because a lot of people that have followed this case, they're wondering, with what we know about Joseph Smith and his long criminal past, as you just alluded to, how did the justice system fail Carlie in this case?
Oh, it just breaks my heart because this guy, Joseph Smith, he has filed dozens of appeals while he's been sitting on death row, claiming everything was unfair. What was unfair is that he kidnapped this girl, and I remember the video. I've played it over in my mind 100 times of her walking along. She's looking down, and he grabs her by the arm and then takes her off. And that's the last she is known or seen of until her partially nude body, nude from the waist down, is found. She's only wearing a shirt and 1 sock when her body, beaten, abused, is found. Well, I'll tell you what. I understand why the Supreme Court wants unanimous verdict in the sentencing phase, but to apply this ruling retroactively, I think is so unfair to the crime victim's family, the Brucias in this case.
And Nancy, with everything you know about this case, what do you think the odds are of Smith escaping the death penalty?
Well, you know, as time passes, that's a prosecutor's nightmare to have to retry a case that's 10 years, 12 years old. Like this one, witnesses disappear, they die, their memories fade. But one thing doesn't fade, Jesse, the video. The video and the way this child's body was found. If they don't cop a plea and they take this to a new jury, I predict he will get the death penalty.
All right, well, we'll continue to follow developments in this case. And as always, Nancy, thank you so much for bringing us all the latest.